You have consistently denied the Holocaust happened. You have called it a lie. And I'm just curious, I have some photos. These are dead bodies from a German concentration camp taken by the Associated Press. Mr. President, is this photo fabricated? Is this photo a lie?
No. I'm asking you a different question. There are many historical events, similar historical events. Why is this one in particular so important to you?
Because you're denying it happened.
But in World War II, 60 million people were killed. Why are we just focusing on this special group alone? We're sorry for all the 60 million people that lost their lives equally. All of them were human beings. And it doesn't matter whether they were Christians or Jews or Buddhists or Muslims. They were killed. So we're sorry for everyone.
Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, by George Santayana. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, the world, which was deemed so civilized, was shocked to hear about the unimaginable horrors that took place in Germany. Why do we need to remember this atrocity? It is necessary to remember. We must not forget in order to prevent the repeat of such unspeakable brutality. Yet in a world of technology, violence, and numbness to the pain of others, might we be cold to a history that is deemed to repeat itself if not met with truth? In 2009, I traveled to Ukraine. Ukraine is between Russia and Europe. Its climate, soil, and potential make it a breadbasket of rich farmland and productivity. In 2014, Ukraine is in a tug-of-war between Europe and Russia. That is, do they become part of the European Union, or do they reattach themselves to Russia, a country they freed themselves from in 1989? In Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, there's a World War II museum. My view of humanity and history changed that day. Our interpreter Katia could not speak so clearly because she lived the legacy of Holodomor. Holodomor was the deliberate, targeted mass starvation of Ukrainians from 1932 to 1933. Less than a decade later, Hitler strived to exterminate a group of people as well. 7 to 10 million innocent lives became a national tragedy. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad denied the Holocaust in the 21st century. The Soviet Union has long denied the Holodomor. Denial does not erase truth. I am intrigued by history, and I want to learn from it. Perhaps this unit will ignite a fire in your soul that burns for the compassion of mankind. Holodomor, how could this happen? Well, the present is shaped by the history. In 1917, Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, took power in Russia. In 1922, Ukraine became a part of the Republic of Russia. In 1924, Lenin died, and the brutal Stalin ascends to power. In 1928, Stalin initiated a program of agricultural collectivization that forced farmers to give their private land, livestock, and equipment to create collective farms. Money collected was used to finance his industrial plans. You know, they say you can know a person by what they say. These are some of Stalin's quotes. A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic. Another one. Death is a solution to all problems. No man, no problem. A quote on power. The only real power comes out of a long rifle. A quote on gratitude. Gratitude is an illness suffered by dogs. And finally, I trust no one, not even myself. 1928-1929, collective farms, the plight of the Ukrainian farmer. In 1929, Ukrainian farmers were still known for their independence, and many refused to join the collective farms. These farmers, labeled kulaks, were branded as enemies, and they were to be liquidated as a class of people. In 1930, 500,000 individuals in Ukraine were dragged and packed into freight trains and shipped to Siberia. There they died from starvation and cold. In 1932 and 1933, Soviets increased production quotas, which were impossible to meet. Starvation becomes widespread. In 1932, a decree was passed by Stalin. It called for the execution of any person, even a child found taking as little as a stalk of wheat, the very place they were forced to work. Stalin wanted to teach a crushing lesson through starvation. In 1933, people in Ukraine were dying at a rate of 30,000 a day. Stalin denies to the world that there's any famine in Ukraine. How could anything like Holodomor happen again? It did, it has, and it continues. These are some genocide statistics from the 20th and 21st century. Armenia, 1 million killed from 1915 to 1923. China, under Mao, 58 million killed. USSR, under Stalin, between Russia and Ukraine, there's an estimated 20 million deaths related to his regime. The Holocaust, 5.7 million killed from 1933 to 1945. Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, 1.6 million killed between 1975 and 1978. Bosnia, 250,000 killed from 1992 to 1995. Rwanda, 1 million killed in 1994. Somalia, 300,000 killed from 1991 to the present. Darfur, at least 450,000 killed from 2003 to the present. Remember Stalin's quote, "A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic." Never become that cold towards death. I told you that my view of humanity changed. It is quite mysterious how the seemingly insignificant look into a person's eyes reveal the window of their soul. Our group rode a bus driven by Victor, and we were heading toward the airport. See, in Kiev, the interstate system is modern and resembles the four-lane system. We were in heavy traffic, and an obviously intoxicated man was slowly crossing 4 lanes of traffic. Victor warned us not to look. He told me that it was common for a man to be killed, a drunk, crossing a highway. I remember the horror in my daughter Ashley's eyes. It revealed that she didn't want to witness the fate of the man, yet she did. I too wanted to cover my eyes and see. I don't know what became of him. I did not witness the ending. He represented a stripped hope of people that were robbed of humanity, a legacy left by history. But I have hope. That is you. You are the future. The legacy of our future will be based on your choices. I will leave you with a question. Do you want to be part of the problem, or do you want to be part of the solution? It is always a choice. Thank you.
watching RT International, and disturbing pictures are coming in from Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. There, as many as 13 civilians may have been killed when shells hit a bus stop and a car. That's according to local medics. RT's Roman Kosarev was at the scene.
Another residential area here in Donetsk was hit this morning around 9 a.m. on Thursday. One direct hit came right into this trolley bus. Another hit came into this passenger vehicle. The driver, his body is completely burned. If you can point the camera this way, the windows were blown out as the result of the blast. So obviously the shelling of civilian areas continues here. The OSC monitoring mission, they're here as well. They're recording, documenting everything that's going on, and we will see the result of their report in the days to come. Roman Kosarev, RT, Donetsk.
Well, some witnesses say they saw the bus stop being shelled from a nearby truck. Self-proclaimed authorities in the city say they've detained a Ukrainian army sabotage group, which they claim could have been responsible for the attack. Kiev, meanwhile, says there are no army units in the location and blame anti-government forces. It's the second time a bus stop has been hit this week.
That I know of. And we lived in a nice house. It wasn't super huge or anything. It was just a nice, comfortable house. And it was a very nice life. I had very many friends, Jewish friends, but I think I had more non-Jewish friends than Jewish friends because through my sport activities, there were more non-Jewish people involved than Jewish people. I was the only girl in my class. I was the only Jew in my class, and it never made any difference. I mean, I never felt any anti-Semitism until a certain time.
Do you recall feeling an awareness of your Jewishness?
Well, I always knew I was Jewish, but our house, there was no religion practiced, really.
In January '39.
Why did they decide to do that?
Well, like I said before, I personally believe that my father's decision was influenced by some other relatives who decided that it would be better to split us up, since it probably was too hard for 5 or 6 to come to the United States at one time. And you never know what was going to happen later on, so he figured it would be safer to put my sister and I on a children's transport to Holland.
Were his numbers more favorable, his number and your mother, and he had a number for your other sister?
Yes, he did.
And she stayed with them?
My younger sister stayed with my parents in Stuttgart, yes.
And how old was she at the time?
5 or 6.
Mm-hmm. And you were how old at the time?
I was 12 at the time, and my sister that went with me to Holland was 10.
There was fear. There was crying, whispering, not knowing. We stood with our arms above our heads. We relieved ourselves where we stood. Our destination and our fate was unknown. I'm Bailey, and I will be teaching you about the boxcar horrors of the Holocaust. I chose this topic because I wanted to find out how the Jews were treated on their way to extermination camps. The railroads were essential to the killing process. People that died in the boxcars on the way to extermination camps were left to rot. The Nazi Party won a majority in the 1932 election. As the leader of the Nazi Party, Hitler was appointed to the position of Chancellor in January 1933. After President Hindenburg died in 1934, Hitler took over completely and declared himself leader of Germany. The Holocaust was the systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of approximately 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. Holocaust is a word of Greek origin meaning sacrifice by fire. The Nazis, who came to power in Germany in January 1933, believed that Germans were racially superior and that Jews, deemed inferior, were a threat to the so-called German racial community. In 1933, the Jewish population of Europe stood at over 9 million. Most European Jews lived in countries that Nazi Germany would occupy or influence during World War II. By 1945, the Germans and their collaborators killed nearly 2 out of every 3 European Jews as part of the final solution, the Nazi policy to murder the Jews of Europe. They built extermination or concentration camps for the Jews. Most of the Jews were taken to the extermination camps in boxcars. These were the 6 most common extermination camps. The boxcars, made to carry 40 people, were now carrying 90 to 140 Jews. The floors of the boxcar were made of limestone to burn the prisoners' feet. The only light came from a barred window. If Jews were to open the window to ask for food, they would be answered with a bullet. For the dead and the living, we must bear witness. Monsters exist, but they are too few in number to be truly dangerous. More dangerous is the government, ready to believe and act without asking questions. If we bear all this suffering, and if there are still Jews left when it is over, then Jews, instead of being doomed, will be held up as an example. Thou shalt not be a victim, thou shalt not be a perpetrator, but above all, thou shalt not be a bystander. The transports used to come in during the night, but there were some in the daytime too. When you heard that whistle from the commandant of the camp that the transport was coming in, the men in the camp had to get ready to unload the people. So that whistle was like somebody would tear out your insides. You knew, here are the people, children, our elder people, people who never did anything wrong in their life, and they're going to go, and you cannot say, you cannot resist, you cannot. Inside it built up that revenge, and that resentment, and that anger, and that pain. Sometimes they came in during the day, and sometimes so many came that they could not handle it. They told them that they are going to work, so it just seemed to them to be the truth, and that was hard. It was hard. You walk by, and you look at that face, and you know in a half an hour it won't be there, and you can't even tell. You just put on a smile, your best face. It hurt. It was very hard. When I had to work near the railroad tracks, a transport came, and they sent us all to the compound, except for those who worked with the unloading of the people. A few times we went to clean the houses of the SS, and there wasn't enough time to run back. So they would lock us in, or we knew ourselves we were not supposed to walk out and watch it. And sometimes we saw the people the way they were delivered. Before they're dead, they tortured them before they were dead. We saw them leaving and screaming, and children crying, and elderly people, and I could not explain the feeling that I had, and I wondered why. Why? Just why? That why was such a big question, and nobody could answer it. They brought a transport, so they took me to clean up the living quarters of the SS, and some of the SS people had their windows facing the railroad track. When I was there cleaning with another girl, the whistle blew that a train was coming, and so we knew we have to remain there. We could not go out, and the transport came in, and everything went very fast. The load, unloading of the people, and a mother left a baby, I don't know for what reason, in the boxcar. Frenzel, who was at that time in charge of the transport, grabbed that little baby and smashed the skull against the boxcar, and they just threw it in like a dead rat, and that I just cannot forget. I was at this trial about 4 times, and I told him what he did. He didn't deny it. He said he followed orders, and this I cannot forget. Why kill that child in such a miserable way? Why? Why? It was a human being. We are alive. We are human, with good and bad in us. That's all we know for sure. We can't create a new species or a new world. That's been done. Now we have to live within those boundaries. What are our choices? We can complain and curse and change nothing. We can choose evil like our enemies have done and create a world based on hate. Or we can try to make things better. Remember this if you can remember nothing else. To forget a Holocaust is to kill twice.